I made sacrifices because I no longer went out to the bar every weekend with my buddies, and instead I came home to my family. I made sacrifices. These aren't sacrifices. This is you honoring your choice and your decision to live in that commitment. Let's get it. There was a point during last week's look back where Kody was giving his explanation, or at least an example, of all the sacrifices he's made to love you. Wasted. So he had to give an opportunity, and I'm sure, because the fans have been calling for that explanation, as well as I'm sure some of the production staff and maybe even the director wanted to hear exactly what Kody was talking about. Can you give us an example of the things that you gave up in order to bring Christine into the family? What were the sacrifices that you've made in order to make her a part of your family, give her 6 kids, have her struggle with you side by side, shoulder to shoulder for 30 plus years? What did you give up in order to to make all that possible for her? And one of the things that he said, or at least he cited, was his previous sexual potential exploits, some opportunities that he could have had, and some ladies that he could have dated. Now, when I'm listening to a lot of this foolishness, for one, it's annoying as hell because you're a grown-ass man, Doc. You're a grown man. So if you made a decision to date one person as opposed to dating somebody else, that's called a decision. That's not called a sacrifice. You're not making a sacrifice. Oh yeah, I had a little, back in the day we used to have the little black phone books. I had a little black phone book full of phone numbers, and I made a sacrifice by giving up all this potential boom boom brakadak that I could have got in order for me to date and marry the woman that I'm with today. I gave up all this stuff, the sacrifices that I made, not dating other people and taking opportunities when I go out to the bar to not knock people down left and right every chance I get an opportunity. These are the sacrifices that I made. There's sacrifices. If that's not a sacrifice, that's called a choice. That's called honoring your commitment. That's called being an adult. That's called living up to your responsibilities. That's what that's called. It's not called you making a sacrifice because you're not jumping on top of everybody who walks by and smiles at you sideways. That's not a sacrifice. That's what I hear between Kody, and to be honest with you, this isn't the first time we've heard such nonsense spewed about this family, or at least from this family, with regard to all the opportunities they could have had prior to dating or marrying into the family, a la Robin. Robin came into the family. Oh, she had all these options. All these guys were trying to talk to her. All these guys were trying to get at her. Oh, she was a Diesel Jean model, and she had all these people that were trying to talk to her and holler at her and knock her back down and rotate her ties, etc., etc., etc. But she chose us. That's right. She made a choice. It's not a sacrifice. She didn't give up shit because she decided not to go with Joe Blow or Randy Two Legs or whatever the case, 3 Leg Captain Tripod. That's not a sacrifice. Okay, it's called a choice. And when you're dating somebody, you're making these types of choices all the time. You can make a choice where the person says, look, I would love to date you. I'd love to go out with you. But you have to have X, Y, Z, or you have to have certain criteria in order for me to consider going out. Oh, I made sacrifices because I decided to go to school and get a good job. Or I made sacrifices because I no longer went out to the bar every weekend with my buddies, and instead I came home to my family. I made sacrifices. These aren't sacrifices. This is you honoring your choice and your decision to live in that commitment. And like I said, it's ridiculous that you're going back 30 years later and talking about the person that you could have dated. Especially when we take into account that the person, if we're talking about the same person, the person we heard about from the book, it's my understanding that the person that Kody was talking about, he had this great opportunity to date this other person. That other person was 17 years old. So if you were doing all this and all this waiting and stuff, that would make you a groomer, dumbass. So what are you trying to admit? I had an opportunity to ruin yet another woman's life. And I made the sacrifices not to ruin this woman's life the same way I ruined these other 3 women's lives, But I couldn't think about it. I could have ruined a whole nother person. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous on its face. Let's take a look at a clip so we all know what we're talking about, because, TLC is dropping the bag and not letting everybody see this stuff. So I want to give an opportunity for people to know exactly what it is we're referring to. Let's take a look.
She asked to be in my family. And when she came in, she fundamentally adjusted everything.
Yeah, that's what happens when you date people. They fundamentally adjust some of the stuff that you do. Like I said, if you're dating 15 women at the same time and you finally want to settle down with one, you might have to give up those other women. She fundamentally changed everything I was doing. It's ridiculous. She's going to make demands, because you know why she gets to make demands and why he gets to make demands on your life and your lifestyle is because now you don't just have a singular lifestyle. You have a shared objective and a shared lifestyle that you're working on together. That's the first thing. Let's take a look at this second clip.
There was a woman that I was courting for a very long time before I married Janelle. Her and Mary were friends. After I married Christine, she still wanted to be in the family. Christine shut it down the first time because, Christine and I were friends. She says, I'd never marry you if you married her. And then Christine had no interest in having her in the family after Christine had come into the family.
Now, wait a minute. According to my calculations, you were courting Mary for 4 months. You married Mary on April 21st, 1991. After you courted her for 4 months. You said after you married Mary, you started talking to one of her friends. That would have been 1991. 2 years later, on January 17th, 1993, you married Janelle, not Christine, Janelle, because there's a whole person between you and Mary getting married, because remember, Christine is the third wife. So you married Janelle on January 17th, 1993, after, according to you guys, one date. You married Janelle 2 weeks later, so you technically only courted Janelle for 2 weeks. Then, on March 25th, 1994, you courted and married Christine after courting her for 6 weeks. That's when you married Christine. So the difference between Mary, you courted for 4 months, married her in 91. Janelle, you courted her for 2 weeks, married her in 1993. Christine, you courted her and married her after 6 weeks in 1994. But apparently this mysterious third woman, you married, who you never married and you wanted to marry, you talked to her and courted her for 3 years. And that's if you started courting her the day after you got married to Mary, and you were ready to marry her the day after or a month after you married Christine. You courted her for 3 years. That story makes no sense. Robin was the longest person that you dated and courted. That was 6 months. You courted Robin, and that was like ridiculous. And to be honest with you, you courted her and asked her to marry you after 6 months. And the only reason why it took you longer than 6 months to actually get married is because you were trying to get TLC to pay for that big shindig. If TLC wasn't going to pay for that big shindig, you couldn't afford to move her down to Utah so you could marry her. And you couldn't afford to have the big shindig wedding that you had that TLC paid for. That's why it took you so long to actually marry Robin. But you were courting Robin and you proposed to Robin within 6 months, according to the storyline. So I don't understand why it would take you 3 years to figure out whether you want to marry somebody all of a sudden. You met and married Janelle after 2 weeks. Shit. This stuff you can order on Amazon and take longer than 2 weeks for you to get. So I don't understand what you were talking about with regard to that. So the idea that somehow Christine came in and all of a sudden messed it up. Hell, you had met and were talking, supposedly courting her before you met Janelle. So how did Christine come into play and her decision making come into play? Because she wasn't even in the family. Not to mention the entire idea that somehow she begged you to get into the family, or she approached you or talked to you about coming into the family, to me is completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. Who gives a shit who tried to talk to who was attracted to whom first? You made a decision to go out with her. If she asked you out and you said yes and you went out with her, it is what it is. If she told you that I won't date you or I won't be with you if you're with this other person, and you said, you know what, I want to be with you, I want to marry you, you're the one I want, so I'm going to let this person go, that's a choice. It's a decision. You don't get credit for the decisions that you make, because the decision that you make clearly were always in your best interest. You didn't make decisions based on their best interest or what was good for them. You made decisions what was good for you and what you thought was good for you at the time. Maybe things didn't work out for you the way you planned, but you don't get to go back now and say that I made all these sacrifices and I gave you this wonderful gift by deciding to go out with you because I pitied you or whatever the case may be. That's your business, your fault. I don't feel sorry for Kody at all when it comes to that whole situation. The next thing is, why would you bring up somebody who you used to talk to 30 years ago as a potential, my life could have been different. Coulda, woulda, shoulda don't mean nothing. It's usually not. That's not how I learned it in high school when we were on sports team. We didn't say coulda, woulda, shoulda didn't mean nothing. It was another SH word. But that's just the truth of it. You can't predict that would have been a great situation or a wonderful situation. Hell, you might have married that woman and she might have left you the first week because you were corny. The first time you came home with that rusty, dusty ass bread talking about I can't afford to feed the family, she might have packed a bag and left and rolled out on you. You don't know. You don't know. And I kind of suspect that this woman is making a reemergence because this might be somebody whom Kody can get to come in and run Christine down. So he's trying to prop her up and give her credit as this is a person who would have made all the difference in the world. And oh my goodness. And here she is. Here's her name, Susan Mary Jane Rottencrotch. Why don't you come in here and talk to everybody, tell them how wonderful our relationship was and how Christine ruined it. To be honest with you, if she does that, to me, that would be the saddest example of something somebody could do. She would only be destroying herself because you're going to put yourself in a crossfire for somebody who is clearly using you for an opportunity to try to make somebody else look bad. And once the YouTubers and the vloggers and the Redditors and everybody else start setting upon you and they start ripping your life apart, you're not going to enjoy that circumstance. So do yourself a favor, stay up out this business. If you had a time with Kody where you guys could have dated, you could have went out and it would have been wonderful and great, but Christine somehow stopped it, bully for her for stopping it, okay? If you were that desperate to try to be with him and he was that desperate to be with you, he would have been with you. Because after all, it didn't take a whole lot for Kody to be able to go out with Robin because Christine even acknowledged that she didn't know anything about Robin until it was too late and she was getting ready to come into the family. So if this is something that Kody was determined to do, my position is he would have done it. Let me know what you guys think down below. This has been My Take. I'm James. This has been My Take on Reality, and I'm out.
Yeah.